Douglas Blackthorn is but a humble woodcutter, living and working in Riverwood. He lives a simple but peaceful life, and is more than content with his lot. However, he grows troubled as of late. He's heard no news from his regular customers in Helgen, and has decided to take a small trip to check in on them. Little would he know that these first steps would lead him to the very fate of Skyrim. It was time Douglas left his humble town and set out in the wider world. It was nice for about 10 seconds. I was enjoying the scenery, a nice little walk by the river, and then I was interrupted by a pack of wolves, from which I caught a rock joint, and a pretty nasty case of rock joint. This would cause much pain for Douglas later, but this would also serve as the first of many tests for Douglas's trusty wood axe. The alpha wolf tried its luck, but it was woefully unaware that it was dealing with a sigma like Douglas. I thought I'd quickly nab the warrior stone, as we would be running a two-handed wood axe for the whole playthrough, and I continued on my way. Black smoke was rising from Helgen, and as I approached, a dragon emerged, but not to worry, I watched it fly away and it popped out of existence. Skyrim's dragon crisis had fixed itself before it could even start. Inside, Douglas found a corpse resembling his favourite snack, a piece of beef jerky, and before it crumbled to ash, he found its journal. The journal told the story of the dragon attack, and how Hrothgar and Ralof had escaped to the keep. These two could very well be the only survivors, and Ralof was Hod's brother-in-law, who is Douglas's boss, so this could be in Douglas's best interest to go help him out. So Douglas took to the caves below the keep and found blood trails almost immediately, and following them led to both Ralof and Hrothgar writhing in pain on the ground. They needed health potions fast. I quickly found two and returned with haste. I thought I could save both of them, so I grabbed 2 potions. As I gave Ralof his, a chunk of cave came crashing down. It killed Hrothgar instantly. Douglas had tried, but alas, he was gone. So I left with Ralof and returned to Riverwood. I'd been gone for like 20 minutes and I'd already found someone trying to squeeze in on my job. Douglas managed to scare him off with his superior muscle striations. He then chopped wood in only a loincloth to assert dominance. Ralof was reunited with his family, and Gerda wanted to reward Douglas properly. She gave him full access to her house and a spot in her marital bed. They spent the night together, while Hod watched in the corner. Douglas bid farewell to his friends, and at this point the rock joint had spread. I was now moving at a snail's pace, and needed to find a shrine or a potion soon. The Riverwood trader had what I needed for a hefty price, and the owners needed help returning their stolen claw. Douglas was feeling very adventurous after today's excursion, and agreed to help. Douglas had tested his humble wood axe against the beasts of the woods. Now it was time to test it on men. The bandits of Bleak Barrow were not ready for Douglas's aggressive, unrelenting fighting style. Years of felling trees and splitting logs had given Douglas a raw strength unmatched, at least by these bandits. Inside we found some bedrolls, which was pretty helpful because I needed to sleep. Exhaustion was setting in. I have realistic needs installed, so I need to eat, drink and sleep. So I thought this would do for the night, or so I thought. Something had noticed me while I was sleeping, which kind of creeped me out. Luckily it was just some rogue Draugr. While they were a bit stronger than the bandits, they were squishy enough to be felled under Douglas's axe. Douglas ate some bread that he took after his night with Gerda, and he pressed onwards. I saved a bandit from killing himself on a trap by killing him. Douglas tried to brute force the door, but realising that this was simply a Bethesda puzzle, it would be easier to spin 3 stones and pull a lever. Beyond the door, I once again caught a disease via skeever bite. By the end of this playthrough, Douglas will be fully under control by the brainworms, and Skyrim is going to have a real menace on its hands. I cut through some webs, and Douglas's next challenge was before him. It wasn't much of a challenge. This axe is actually proving itself to be a very effective weapon. At this point, I don't really know what kind of build this is, or what build I'm going to be going for. I just kind of dump skill points into two-handed and just watch the axe go chop. I cut down Arvel the Swift, and he swiftly teamed up with the Draugr. However, this bad guy collab would not be enough to stop Douglas. Many would try through this video to stop Douglas, and they would all fail. The Draugr surrounded Douglas, but this just meant he could swing his axe in every direction. His bloodlust was flowing now. Not even the sleeping Draugr was safe. One Draugr tried to take me out with what felt like the equivalent of Nord air conditioning, and I quickly made it into the inner sanctum. Okay, so this is where I begin to suspect something is wrong with my enemy spawn rate. I was still at a very low level, and the Draugr was spawning in numbers around every corner. Now, I want you to remember this part in the video, because this spawn issue will show up in a very crazy way later on in the video. The Overlord tried to crawl out of his tomb, but before he could say Vus, Douglas was laying into him. I didn't take his cool ice sword because we're using the woodcutter's axe only in this run. I did, however, take his neat looking stone. Upon exiting Bleak Falls, before I could even get past the loading screen, I was ambushed by a dragon that was severely over my level. Now, this has something to do with the mod that spawns dragons before you become the Dragonborn, or without needing to be the Dragonborn. So it's obviously spawned a dragon that's like way beyond my level. So yeah, I was not beating this guy, and I had to run for cover. Ah yes, the trees that Douglas had spent his entire life cutting down were now providing cover and safety for him. So yeah, this dragon just would not let up. I thought I could take cover in Anisa's cabin. Sadly, cabins are made of wood. I tried giving the dragon a few chops with the wood axe, but it just wasn't working. So I took off to Riverwood, and luckily the dragon lost interest. I returned the golden claw, and it was time to head to Whiterun. I felled a giant with my wood axe, and the companions wanted to get in on the ground floor of Douglas's ripped body and use it for their own gains. Douglas rejected them. Listen, Douglas is a simple man. He wants to chop wood and drink from streams. So I beelined straight for the Shrine of Talos and cured my skeever diseases, but I was still thirsty. This was nothing a night in the local inn couldn't fix. Douglas knew only one way to pay for his bed tonight, and so he hit up the local chopping block for some quick coin. I had a nice level up, and I dumped that into two-handed. My axe was growing stronger and stronger by the day, and the grindstone would make it even stronger, by 1 point. Beggars can't be choppers. I reached the Jarl and informed him of the dragon attacks, and he wanted the neat stone that I picked up. As I handed it over, news of another dragon attack was reported. Was this the same dragon that ambushed me? This could be my chance to get even. Douglas charged out with the guards, who began peppering the dragon with arrows, and then the dragon made the biggest mistake of its life. It landed. It was now within axing distance. Douglas split the dragon's head like a log. So then some guy called the Dragonborn showed up and absorbed the dragon's soul, getting all the credit for killing the dragon. Douglas was then tasked with escorting the Dragonborn to High Hrothgar so he could begin his training. Reluctantly, Douglas agreed. Upon reaching Iverstead, he began chopping wood as the Dragonborn watched. Douglas got a few cheeky lifts in and agreed to help deliver supplies for Klimek. Pretty hefty satchel of what I think is orange soda and chips. And then I found a fellow woodcutter. He looked like he was going to make the pilgrimage, and I kind of wanted to help him. I was going to guide him up, make sure he didn't die. He was one of my people. He ended up changing his mind, and I never saw him again. The only trouble on the 7,000 steps was the hard-hitting frost troll, who was swiftly taken down by a fellow pilgrim. I delivered the orange soda and chips, and the party could begin. The Dragonborn got immediately comfy, and I guess he began his training. Douglas ended up becoming the Greybeard's errand boy. They wanted to send him to Ustengrav to claim the Horn of Jürgen Windcaller. So I hopped on a car and arrived to Morthal, just a stone's throw from Ustengrav. By this point I was very hungry and thirsty, so I had a supper of cheese and stagnant bog water. I saw another wood mill and once again got my lifts in. Necromancers had taken over Ustengrav and controlled an army of undead bandits. So at this point I decided to ditch my rags and wear something with a bit more armour, but I still wanted it to look like something a woodcutter would wear. So this is a challenge run, but it's not a wood axe only run. It's a bit more than that. It's a woodcutter run. So there is some loose RP here. I didn't want to just wear like super enchanted armour and then use the woodcutter's axe because that would be a bit too easy. So I chose something with a bit more armour from one of the bandits, but it still looked the part of a woodcutter. For some reason I thought about sneaking up on the Necromancers, but it was far too late to be like a sneaky dude at this point, so I just reverted to my crazy woodcutter head-splitting ways. This is what's worked for me so far. And it's fine, Douglas is not a stealthy guy anyway. Further in, I was rewarded with plentiful amounts of cheese wheels. I would burn through these very quickly with realistic needs on. I also wanted to drink the bubbling, noxious dungeon water, but thought better of it. Douglas has been diseased too many times already. And then I discovered that my prize had already been taken, and that the culprit was back in my hometown of Riverwood. In my absence, another woodcutter was encroaching on my woodcutting turf. Douglas would have to save the world quickly if he still wanted a job waiting for him when he got back. Yeah, I don't like Delphine, so I decided to steal all her apples and her giant's toe. This giant's toe could be the motherlode source of protein Douglas was looking for. It would serve as a good snack on the road to Kynesgrove. On that road, Douglas actually happened to meet some giants. Their toes were indeed looking tempting and snackable, but instead these giants took him in. Douglas's ripped bod and thick muscle striations must have convinced the giants he was one of them. You know what, this would have been a good life for Douglas, but he had a world to save. So he stuffed a handful of mammoth cheese in his pocket and hit the road. The road turned into a waterfall that led me to another mill. Another quick lifting sesh led me to discover levitation. If I could only harness this power, no dragon would be safe from Douglas's axe. This power was quickly taken from me, but I found instead a pretty sweet camping spot. A nice camping spot by the river. I think that's enough for any man. So I took a long slumber, readying myself for the battle ahead. As I approached Kynesgrove, the weather drastically changed in an instant. I don't know if this is meant to happen, or if this is kind of tidings for things to come. Alduin raised another dragon and I began playing Whack-A-Tail. The dragon got to experience life again for about 10 seconds before I snatched it away. And for my reward, Delphine sent me to an all-expenses-paid axe conference in Solitude with live demonstrations of the new line of Skyrim axes. This was all to butter me up for my next mission, infiltrating the Thalmor Embassy. I snuck in my trusty axe and a human skull I picked up somewhere along the way. Those were Douglas's only personal items, and I would regret this later very much. I arrived at the party and was told to cause a distraction so I could sneak off. So naturally I stripped down to pose and flex my physique, a physique elves like these Thalmor could only dream of achieving. Such taut, deep muscle striations. I then realised that the party goers obsessing over my body would not allow me to slip away quietly. Luckily for me, Erica began embarrassing himself in front of the wenches, and I snuck into the kitchen. Douglas instantly took advantage of the blind cook and ransacked the joint. He now had enough cheese and wine for a lifetime of quiet evenings in. I reclaimed my wood axe and felt whole again, and immediately began splitting heads once more. These Thalmor skulls felt a lot thicker than most. They did prove themselves to be tougher adversaries. I started rummaging through my pockets to try and find food that could heal me. I think realistic needs removes the mechanic for food providing health, so for some reason I instead decided to just drink a bunch of wine. I don't know why I did this. This was a mistake. I regret this a lot. But hey, it did give Douglas the courage to charge headfirst into Palpatine. But this courage came at a great cost. For the state of drunkenness does not only cause blurry vision and stumbling, it also causes ragdolling. Ragdolling that takes eons to stand up from, allowing enemies a good 7 seconds to just fully lay into you. I frickin' slipped down some stairs, landing on my neck. Luckily, Douglas has a freakishly thick neck, and that saved him from Skyrim life as a vegetable. Although this fall did lead me to the dungeon and a way out. I freed some prisoners, but my partner in crime was captured. I did try saving him, but he was burned alive in front of me. Douglas wondered, if he was sober, could he have saved Malborn? He felt bad, but at least he had saved the other prisoners, who were immediately killed by a frost troll waiting in the caves. Douglas was pissed now, in more ways than one. At this point, getting the hell out of Dodge was the best bet. Mere steps away from freedom, I tripped down a mountain, and I was not getting up. I didn't die. Well, I don't know if I was dead or not, but I wasn't getting up and I wasn't reloading, so I had to reload to save myself. And now I had a lot to think about while I sobered up. Douglas vowed to never drink again. Back at Riverwood, he gave all his booze to Ognar. With the information I gained from the Thalmor Embassy, I now had to seek out Esbern. He was living in the sewers of Riften, and in my self-loathing, I knew I belonged there too. The Riften guards tried to shake me down, but a dragon attacked out of nowhere, and it aggroed all the guards. The main gate remained locked, and the guards were fully aggroed, they weren't coming back. I found another entrance through the meadery, and then I met Brynjolf. He had the information I needed, but to him, information was a commodity, and I had to do a job for him in return. I've played Skyrim before, so I thought I could just find Esbern on my own. I knew where he was. What I didn't know is that he doesn't actually spawn until you do the job for Brynjolf. I found out that Bethesda put me in this game, and then I returned to Brynjolf. He wanted me to frame his competition. This was not Douglas's way. Douglas was a straight-up man. This rat behaviour was below him. Like a rat, I entered the sewers, and I found Esbern finally. He kept opening and closing his sliding window. It was pretty funny. Eventually, he let me in, and his little place here was actually kind of cozy for sewer digs. But it turns out Esbern wanted more. He wanted a bigger place, somewhere to fully stretch out, and so to Skyhaven Temple we went. The Forsworn were guarding the entrance, and I got to watch them slap down a dragon. This was actually a pretty cool fight. I got to watch them launch magic and arrows at the dragon, and this was the first time I think I've seen a dragon actually do the sliding thing where it crashes, and then it flung off the mountain into the river. So yeah, safe to say I didn't want to mess with these guys, they were pretty powerful, so I snuck into the temple. So yeah, I didn't realise our new base was going to be the Palazzo Bruschi. What was Esbern getting me into? He tried to give me the full house tour, but not wanting to resurrect Italian-style fascism, I left. It was evident that the Dragonborn had become pretty comfortable at High Hrothgar. He was now wearing only a loincloth and refused to get dressed. Safe to say we could no longer rely on him for help. And so the Greybeards decided to teach me the ancient power of Old Man Yells at Cloud, and I reached Parthenax. He told me that we could use an Elder Scroll to find out Alduin's darkest secrets, and then use them to wind him up later on. Septimus pointed me in the right direction. Sadly, that direction was Ulftand. Yep, I knew the hell that awaited me. Now, the spiders were fine as long as you don't let them gang up on you. The Woodaxe was actually holding up pretty well. I even met a fellow Woodaxe main down here. I tried teaching him the way of the Woodaxe, his swings were too wide, and the spheres of death took him out. These Dwemer spheres were pretty tough and they could take a hit. I narrowly missed the spinning blades, it took out a sphere for me. That was pretty lucky. And then the Thalmor appeared. Initially I thought I could let the Thalmor and the spiders take each other out, but instead they both just attacked me instead. Now, remember back in Bleak Barrow I said remember the spawn issue, and that I thought there might be some kind of enemy spawn issue? Well, this came back with a fury here. I had never seen so many Thalmor in my life. They just came like a tide. Around every corner there were more and more spawning. I think I had well over a dozen on my tail. They were just following me relentlessly. I couldn't fight them straight up. I had to take some high ground to escape, and in classic Bethesda fashion I kind of hugged the wall and climbed up vertically. Too bad for me, they had arrows and magic, and plentiful amounts of them. I took 2 ice spikes to the chest before discovering a small gap I could squeeze through, and I was safe for a second. Now we can truly admire the hordes at the gates. I've never seen this before, this many Thalmor. I thought I could use the Dwemer Centurion to take out the Thalmor horde for me, but yeah, that was taken out almost immediately by the Thalmor. At least I was safe now, as long as they stayed on that side of the gate. I had to take out this squabbling pair, but it was a walk in the park after what I had just faced. I entered Blackreach and the hordes began amassing again. I decided to use the Centurions to aggro the Thalmor away from me and made my way to Mizark. I pressed 4 buttons and managed to obtain the Elder Scroll 5 Skyrim. I brought it back to Paarthurnax and Alduin heard us talking shit. So this boss fight is actually harder than the final boss fight, especially when you're doing a challenge run that limits you. So I had to hide behind a rock and yell at Alduin through a gap. I did some hit and run tactics with my axe, he took the beating and flew away. Now we had to find out where he was hiding. To do this we would need to capture one of Alduin's lieutenants. But before we could do that we would need a whole armistice between the Stormcloaks and the Imperials. And once again the errand boy Douglas was sent to broker peace. The Dragonborn briefly attended the brief talks, once again in his loincloth, refusing to get dressed. He quickly concluded that politics were not for him. A shaky agreement was made between the Imperials and the Stormcloaks, and it was now time to capture the dragon. We lost a Whiterun guard, but the trap did work. Olduving instantly became Alduin's biggest hater, and he agreed to dox him for me. I now had Alduin's address, and it was Skuldufn. Skuldufn was littered with Draugr and dragons. I could cut down the Draugr easily enough, but combined with the dragons it was a bit too much. So I did have to use some kind of cheese tactics here. I did a bit of retreating back inside to recover health, and then I would return to kind of whittle down the health. This worked perfectly. Like I said, it's a bit cheesy, but it works. And that allowed me to take down the Dragon Priest one-on-one. Douglas, he had started out as a humble woodcutter and made it all the way to Sovngarde, all with using only his trusty wood axe. In Sovngarde, Douglas met the only man that could ever mog him. After a very brief throwdown between the two, they decided to start posing together. I think the heroes of Sovngarde were very much inspired by such a display. They came pouring out to help take out Alduin. So remember when I said that the first boss fight with Alduin was much harder? Well, with the heroes by my side, this isn't much of a boss fight. I think at this point Douglas had truly become one with his wood axe. Little did he know that all those years of wood chopping would forge him into a warrior capable of smiting a dragon deity. Soon sent Douglas back, I think out of fear of competition. The surviving dragons gave praise to Douglas, and then he was informed that the useless Dragonborn would be given credit for all his actions. But you know what? Douglas was okay with this. All he ever really wanted was just to return home to Riverwood. This humble woodcutter had beaten Skyrim. Well, that marks the end for Douglas's adventures. That was also the first Skyrim challenge run that I've ever done, so feel free to let me know in the comments below how I did. And if you did enjoy the video and want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. As always, my friends, your viewership is appreciated, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.